I Was Just Overthinking. Every month, join me for a journey through candid conversations where we explore the depths of overthinking, share fresh perspectives, and sprinkle in a dose of inspiration. Get ready to dive into the world of introspection and self-discovery with us. Enjoy the episode. Hello there, I'm back with the first episode of the season. I am so excited to be finally doing this. The first episode of the season is going to be about an experience of a girl being raised and growing up in a family with two brothers. In my experience, I personally have two wonderful brothers, one younger than me and one older than me, making me a middle child, and let's be cool about that one. My whole life I've been getting so many comments about all the stereotypes about being a middle child, but definitely I do fall within that category of people that identify themselves as a middle child, just because I feel like it's very close to how I've conducted myself as a person. But let's not dwell on that and jump into the really interesting bit of the first episode of the season. Why I decided to speak on this is I think, honestly, if you are a guy, if you're a brother, do listen to this podcast episode, because I feel like you will find a lot of insightful perspectives on what it feels like or what it is like for girls to be around brothers and living in a family, growing up together with boys. So I hope you stay until the end of the episode and learn something new about it. And for all of my sisters out there who have had a similar experience, you will have a chance to comment on this episode. So don't be shy. I will be checking all of the responses. If you're listening to the podcast on Spotify, go ahead and comment right below the episode. There is a Q&A section in there where you can tell me what you thought of the episode and tell me about your experience as a sister, as a girl. If you grew up with a brother or brothers, I would love to hear back from you. Without any further ado, let's jump into episode 1 of season 2. I wanted to start off with different ways in which my personality got shaped, and I want to also touch on both positive and somewhat negative aspects of growing up with brothers. Just as a warning, however, I absolutely adore my brothers and I adore them for making me and molding me into the person that I am. I think no matter who you grow up with, I think they genuinely, be it your siblings, be it whoever, right, your friends, your cousins, they do play a really big part in how you're shaped as a human being. So big shout out to both of my brothers. I know they don't really listen to these episodes, but if they are, I love you guys so much and I miss you both a lot. And yeah, this is just a small moment for me to just tell you guys how much I appreciate you and how much you've done for me without even realizing it. What is the experience of a girl growing up with brothers? I'm going to start off with a pretty deep one. I think, and girls, tell me if this is your experience too, but I grew up to be very, very self-critical. Not to say that the reason why I'm so self-critical is because I've been raised in a family with two brothers. I've had two brothers. Not to say that that's the only reason why I'm so self-critical, but I do believe that with time I understood that men are in general much more self-critical and harsh with themselves. I think there's a lot of inner dialogue in my head, and obviously I'm an overthinker, but I think a big part of my overthinking is also just kind of criticizing myself and putting myself and judging myself against really, really high standards and principles. I am never easy on myself, and it's something that I've genuinely worked on for a really long time, and I'm still work in progress. But I think men usually are very self-critical, without even other people knowing, I guess. And I've always kind of indirectly learned that from my brothers. I must say, everything, just like overthinking, I see it as a positive thing because I don't really believe in making everything negative about your experiences. There is always a room to learn more things. And I think self-criticism can be a good thing to a degree. Obviously, do not take it to a degree where it starts to harm your mental health. But I believe I am who I am, and I've reached certain things in my life because of how critical I am of myself. It's how I carry myself, it's how I studied when I was in school, in uni, whatever. It's how much effort I put into myself and into my life and into achieving my goals. And I think without self-criticism, it would have been impossible. But again, I want to say that if you are a person who's similar to this, who can relate to being overly self-critical, definitely assess how healthy it is for you. I know that I am one of the more self-critical people, just because of, if someone could stick a mic into my brain and listen to my dialogue, my inner dialogue about myself, it's very harsh. And I think that's something that is very common for men. And I definitely don't recommend being super self-critical because it can very easily be toxic and it can very easily get to you. And I hope that if you are a person who is similar to this way of thinking, found those, like, genuinely would recommend, first of all, acknowledging that to yourself and telling yourself that, look, you need to be kind to yourself. Your self-talk needs to be less harsh. And I hope that just like I am trying to find that kind dialogue within me and kindness within me, within my heart, to talk to myself in a kinder way and allow myself mistakes, I hope you can find that strength to do it as well, because it's a genuinely healthy thing to do and something definitely to be aware of. Another thing that has really, I would say, been influenced in my life is how I've always looked at myself and viewed myself more of as a human being. I know it might sound odd, it might sound weird, but I'll try and explain. I think from all of my interactions with females and making friends along the way, I think I've realized that a lot of girls do tend to fixate on what they have to offer externally, be it how they look, how their hair is. I don't know. I feel like that's a very almost harsh generalization, but I have really noticed it from my experience that a lot of the girls I've known throughout my life, a lot of girls do fixate on how they look and on things that are more kind of externally viewed and less on internal things, be it, I don't know, achievements, be it personality traits, be it anything else really, mental health even. I think the way we are as women, a lot of what we do tend to fixate on external things. But growing up with brothers, I feel like I was wired slightly differently. And for me, I never really saw the importance of that when I was younger. I always viewed myself and compared myself to my, especially to my older brother, because we have a really small age difference between us. He's just a year older than me. So everything I would do, I would compare it to him, because he is a very smart person. He's very successful, and I've always had that sort of idol, that person who I looked up to, and it was my older brother. And obviously he did not really care about how he looked or anything like that. It was more about, oh, like, I got into this uni, I got this, I got that, this is the marks I would get in school, and I would always sort of sit there and compare myself. And I want to make sure that this is understood. It wasn't like, it's a normal sibling thing to do. I think in most families where there is like more than 2 kids in the family, or just more than one, as long as there is 2, I would say, siblings usually compare themselves to each other. I think it's a pretty normal thing to do in families, and I think honestly it always kept me super kind of on top of my own game. Of course it depends, right? Like, I think there's people who don't really care to sort of compare themselves, and I don't really recommend doing that as well. But the way I did it was to a very healthy degree, because I would say my inner dialogue always would be, okay, if my brother can do this, I can do it too. And I think when you're a little bit younger, everything your like older sibling would do, you would just think that that's kind of the way to be cool, that's the way to be, and you basically learn things and kind of take on a lot of their personality traits and their likes and dislikes. So for me, I think that was partly true, but in most part it was more about like almost competing with each other. So I always competed almost internally with him, and I always had that, had that type of feeling where I know that I can achieve certain things just because my older brother has done it, right? I think it would have been also interesting to hear him out and sort of listen to his perspective, because at the end of the day, it is harder for a first child in the family to go through things, because those are the guys that have to figure everything out by themselves, and they're kind of the guinea pig of the family, if I'm honest. So I will forever be grateful to be the middle child and not the first child, really, because it is usually easier for us, because especially if you're wise like myself, you know what not to do. You learn on their mistakes and you do something that works better maybe. So the way I viewed myself growing up with brothers was always about, what do I bring into the world, or how much have I achieved? My self-worth always kind of revolved around my achievements more than how I looked. Now, it's quite an interesting bit to touch on, because this has slightly changed when I grew up and I moved out of my home and I moved to UK, and I started my journey here. And I started my bachelor's degree, then I did my master's, and I got into the workforce. All of that allowed me a lot of space to grow as a woman and find myself. And at the end of the day, I feel like the way I was when I was younger, I would never go back and change it. I would do it exactly the same way, because I would never get here. But the amount of lessons I've learned from that is just incredible, because I realized a lot of things that weren't really healthy for a woman. I understood that, yes, this is how I was wired, but it is also not fully healthy when you are like slightly older, in your 20s. And if you keep on comparing your achievements to other people, especially to men's achievements, that's not a really healthy thing to do. And this is a really interesting topic, and I really want to bring a girl on the podcast to just talk about this topic, because when I grew up and I am in my 20s, I realized that that's not really ideal to compare yourself to other men, because men's world is almost a different realm of things. Men are harsh, like men are different definitely from women. They live by different rules. They live and operate in a different way. And I feel like I almost got burnt out at the start of my 20s. I almost got burnt out just trying to keep up with men. And at the end of the day, I don't think that was a very healthy thing for me to do. And I've definitely grown out of it. And that will be a whole another podcast episode, because I really would want to have another woman's perspective on this. But yes, I would say that's one of the things that has also influenced me when just because I did grow up with two brothers. A positive, really genuinely positive thing about growing up with two brothers is, for me at least, from my personal experience, is that I grew up with really strong physical and mental boundaries with people. I would say the bigger thing is like the physical boundaries. And I realized this when I started I started making more friends with girls, and I realized that a lot of girls are more kind of touchy. They love to hug each other, and like for me that was like another aspect that I had to get over, because for me it was genuinely uncomfortable to be touched or like have a bit more closer kind of physical relationship with people, like just simple things like a hug or like touching someone's hand and stuff like that. I feel like because I grew up with brothers, I never found that really normal. That was literally me my whole life until I started kind of, exploring myself as a person and as a woman. I was definitely not very comfortable with like just people being in my space, as simple as like I would always move back if someone was right in my face. I feel like I'm still quite uncomfortable with it, if I'm honest. Like I don't like when someone is super close to me, but it's definitely something that I have to kind of break inside me, especially from my experience with my female friends. Shout out to all of my girls. You guys know how weird I used to be with like hugs and all of that. But I feel like the more I broke it down in myself, the more I found myself. Somehow broke down something in me that I felt like always kind of stopped me from being myself, being a woman that I am. So yeah, I think it took me a while to just even be comfortable with like hugging and all of that, but that's definitely one big thing. And I think another side of it is the mental boundaries, which I'm super grateful for as well. I think that one has always kind of kept me pretty sane throughout the years, because I think having mental boundaries with people and not easily trusting people is a good thing to a degree as well. Just because unfortunately we do live in a world where there's loads of evil out there, and the more mental boundaries you have with people, the more protected your soul is, the more protected you are. So I think I will give that one, because I think it's a great thing to have really healthy boundaries with people, both physical and mental. I think another thing that genuinely shaped my personality and something that I've worked on for a really long time is I've obviously grown up with two brothers. I feel like I grew up thinking that showing weakness or like showing vulnerability is bad. And for a girl, I feel like when you're younger, you don't really see the immediate effects of that. But when in my 20s now, I feel like it's definitely incredibly toxic for a woman not to be able to express vulnerability or show some weakness. I think all of it kind of stems into sort of, how men operate. But at the end of the day, I would say that it is a healthy thing to express feelings and worries and concerns, no matter who you are. But from my personal experience, it's definitely very toxic not to be able to show vulnerability. I think as a woman, that's very key to be in your feminine energy, that you should be able to, be free in showing and expressing that to its full extent. It's a crucial thing to learn, and I've definitely put a lot of mental work into that type of thing. But finding myself But I'm not gonna lie, it had been quite a journey for me to realize that, look, like vulnerability doesn't mean that you're weak, or doesn't mean that, you are less of a person. It definitely took me some time to get over it, but having spent my early years with my brothers is definitely something that influenced me. I think when I talk about this stuff, I almost feel really sad for men that they lead a really different life to women. And I think growing up with brothers, you find that sympathy within you. Maybe most girls can't really find that sympathy within them for whatever reasons, but I have really genuine sympathy for men because I feel like the world they live in is very different to where we live in. I think both, obviously, men and women have different struggles that we go through. But yeah, I definitely have sympathy because of that, because all of my like sort of negative self-talk and like being scared, or like being almost bottling up all of my emotions, was genuinely an unhealthy thing, especially in my 20s. I think it's a very, very dangerous thing to do. The more a woman expresses her, feelings, her shows her vulnerability, I think the more we kind of dive deep into our feminine energy, and that's what makes us, at least that's what makes me who I am. Another interesting thing, I think I've noticed that this was something that wasn't really common for a lot of people in my position. I've noticed that a lot of people around me weren't really sporty people. And I've realized that growing up with brothers, for me, there was nothing that was, like, there was no limits to the number of different sports, games that we played. And I think that is what made me a really good team player. And I think I am a really good team player regardless of what environment I'm in, be it among friends, be it in my workplace, anywhere really. I think that's the one thing I've genuinely learned almost naturally from growing up with two boys, with two brothers, is that just I love playing in a team. I love competing, like healthy competition is really fun for me. And the amount of games we used to play as kids with my brothers, and the fact that they never sort of isolated me from that, I will always appreciate, because I didn't realize that that could be a reality for some girls. I'm super grateful that the way my family is, like the way my brothers had been when we were younger, it's like I never really felt any different. I think it definitely had different effects later down the line, which is a whole another topic really. But when I was a kid, I feel like it's a genuinely incredible, and like kudos to my parents and to my brothers for that I was in an environment where I never felt different just because I was a girl. I was almost treated like, I was always seen and treated the same way my brothers were, and we were always judged according to how much we've achieved in life or how well we can do in certain things. And I think that's what made me who I am. To this day, I never feel like there's anything impossible. And I hope that you realize it too. Or I hope that you can, by listening to this episode, you can realize that there's absolutely nothing impossible in this world. If you put your mind to it, and if it's almost meant for you, you will want it that much. And God or universe or whatever you believe in will do everything in their power to make that happen for you, as long as you believe in yourself, you put your mind to it, and you work tirelessly day and night to achieve it. I will forever believe that. But slightly getting off topic, I think it's the most fun part of growing up with brothers is you just have a natural ability or like natural knack for physical things, like any sports or anything that requires some sort of physical ability. I think that definitely gave me an interesting edge. I always loved sports. I always loved doing any sort of activities, and I never kind of steered away from it just because I did grow up with brothers, and that is like the most fun part of it. And I think it's also a cool thing about growing up with brothers is I learned that, and I learned and almost always respected a leader. I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't really talk about. I don't know why. Maybe because maybe it's potentially not very obvious thing, but I always respond to good leaders. If you can't be a good leader, or like I would never respond to it, and I will kind of almost stomp on your head if you can't lead me, then I will have to take charge. And I think that's a very masculine trait to have. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, but it's definitely something I've noticed about myself, that I am a good team player, but only if, I am being led by an almost a qualified leader. And I've noticed that in like the smallest things, like, when I'm playing sports with my friends in a team setting, be it at work, be it anything really, anything small, or like, I don't know, cooking together with your friends, or anything like super small, ending with like working in a team at work. I've definitely noticed that about myself, that if you are a worthy leader, I will trust you and I will let you lead me. But if you can't, I will have to take the reins and I will have to lead. If you are a brother and you're currently, blessed with sister or sisters, definitely keep this in mind and think about how much of an influence you're having on your sisters' lives. And I hope you find it insightful. For all my girlies out there, let me know what you think. Let me know if you have brothers or a brother, and has your experience been the same? I fully realize that it could be that you do have a brother, but you also have sisters. I don't know how that would feel, but I think there is a big difference between someone like me who's grown up only with only boys, and I think there's also a difference between girls that are from families with only girls and sisters. But I would also want to hear from someone who has both, who has sister and a brother. I would really want to hear about your experiences, so don't hesitate to comment anywhere you are listening from. If you are listening from Spotify, definitely use the Q&A of the episode on your screen to let me know your thoughts and experiences. You can also, if you're not already on Instagram following me, my handle is all lowercase. I was just overthinking _ Please go ahead and give me a follow. DM me about your experiences. I really want to know. If you have not already, please give this podcast a rating. Give it 5 stars. I hope that's how you find it, at least. Give it a feedback. If you're listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, it's a very easy system that you can rate the podcast. It genuinely keeps me going and motivates me. Those small things, please go ahead and do it. I would genuinely appreciate it. If you like this episode and found it insightful, feel free to share it on anywhere you want and make sure to tag me. With that, episode 1 of season 2 has come to an end. I really hope that you found it useful. I'm looking forward to our next episode together and more surprises in season 2. With all of my love, until next time, bye.